This is the only issue I've got with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. now after thinking about all this issue with 5013C and reading the original Constitution and all the rest of it, all these legal cases, and then Kennedy's actual own work himself when he's like cleaned up all these rivers and sued all these companies, supposedly for the local people, for the environment. The thing is this, right? If you think of this model where the whole government and state and staff have got people in positions who are meant to do a job, and if they don't do the job, there's meant to be complaints procedures in place, and this is why you have these ombudsmen and people like that. They're meant to do the job properly. You're not meant to need to bring private litigation because the problem is we're paying all this money in taxes and all these people are being appointed. Now, if they're being appointed corruptly, and certain political parties are appointing certain people in government who are going to serve them and not serve the interests of the people, almost like this corporate elite takeover, and all your ombudsmen aren't functioning properly, and all your agencies that you complain to are just, ignoring serious matters of corruption and that, then there's a serious problem where you need a complete and total change in management and governance. But the thing with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., when he's saying, I've sued the department of this or I've sued the department of that, this is the thing, right? To have anyone in government, you have to elect them, right? You have to elect them, or there's no one in the government to even sue, right? Or take action against. You don't have anyone in government unless you elect them. They can't be there unless you've elected them. Now, I've been shown that selflessness policy by that Colchester Council website, right? That policy of selflessness. Now, I was thinking of this comment. Sometimes when you get angry, sometimes you think who's this guy? Who's this guy think he is? Or who's this person think they are? Like, you're nobody, or whatever. I never used to think that, and I've started thinking it though more recently. And what I thought is, these political parties who put forward these candidates and then they start working in the council, after you've signed a selflessness policy, how can you be someone? How can you be anyone? I mean, look at this Councillor King guy at Colchester Council who thinks that he's the bee's knees. He is no one. All those staff have signed a selflessness policy. They are no one. They're no one. They are nobody, in the sense that they're purely there to represent the will of the people who elected them, right? They can't have their own personal opinion. They can't be tied to a political party because they're selfless. Now, if they are, I don't really want to use a machine model. I don't like the machine model, the Android model, because it's a bit Elon Musky, and it starts to get into the whole thing where they're trying to, turn people into part machines anyway. But I mean, for sake of any other model, if you did have an Android, and if you installed onto it only pure law legislation, right, and it only knows law and process, okay, and it's got a cognitive function, so it can process things you ask it and direct it to do, and it follows instructions, right? That really, without trying to be too kind of blatant, that's really how the councils are supposed to work, right? They're not meant to be able to be taken over by corrupt authorities unless the corrupt authorities are the only ones who can, because they've got all money. They're the ones turning up in the council, proposing things, putting plans on the table, because they're the ones who made all the money out of us, and they're the ones who've got the money to afford it. So they're the ones in the council all the time putting stuff on the table, right? Unless it's just someone who wants to do something to their own house, but they're not redeveloping or designing their own whole town or pumping sewage into the water or whatever. Now, the thing is, the way to get things done in government, local or national government, is through petitions. Now, the only reason that those companies are going into the council and apply applications, civil requests, is because they need approval. They're not allowed to do it without approval from the authority, but that's really approval from the community, from everyone, right? And we're meant to have an opposition to them in the council. This is not a suing someone case, a civil case. If we want to oppose them building a factory that's pumping sewage in, then surely you would oppose them in the council. Now, the thing is, surely the petition or even the local referendum, that is it's not a criminal court or a civil court where you're suing for money. If you want something done in matters of church, state, or law, which surely a river's pollution, the health and so forth of the immediate town or area, isn't the right way to make the council do it, or make all these agencies and so forth do it. Although Robert F. Kennedy was suing them, but notice that now Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wanted to get elected with Nicole Shanahan. Suddenly, he's got all these vans pulling up with boxes and boxes of ballots, right? Now, isn't that the way to get things done? Like Stop Cop City at the local level, it's the way you do it. That in matters of church, state, or law, the court is the council, at least in England. I know in America you've got these federal questions and blah, 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 but they do have, this is what Stop Cop City are doing, right? And, I know those councils are corrupt because they're trying to oppose it because they're in these other parties that don't want to do it, but they're meant to be selfless. Looking at that first constitution, they're not even allowed to vote or be a member of a party, because then you've got this bias, and when the public go in with their boxes of petition ballots, this selfless person who wanted to work in the government to serve the community or be the mayor or be the job, they shouldn't have a liberal Democrat or Republican anything opinion loaded on them, or Bill Gates or pro this company or that company. It's merely there with all the regulations of the local council loaded onto it. You walk in with the required number of ballots to do this or that and action it, then it's like walking into a shop and buying something. You should just do it. You should get it. If the river's polluted and they've got these environmental departments in the council that are supposed to, they're the ones who we pay for them to work, to go. They go into the courts and then they make the companies stop polluting. And shouldn't Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I'm not saying that it's not beneficial to have evidence, like sit at the side of these sewage pipes and take samples and gather evidence, because you're still putting a case to the council. But when you're walking with all the ballots, you're effectively saying, right, I want this, we're having that, we want this river cleaned up. That's what it's there for, though. It's like that's what it exists for. And if this mayor at Stop Cop City and these other staff are just trying to cheat and bend the rules and say, oh, you didn't qualify, or this and that, they're really fighting against the actual citizens who are doing the required thing they've got to do, this is the problem now. All these government framework and so forth aren't really meant to be on a side. There should be like a screening process if you're a mayor or working for the council, where you have to prove that you don't support one party or another party, or you don't have any connections with these big business people. And this is what a lot of people have been saying now. This is what a lot of people have been complaining about, because how you're not serving the interests of the people who elected you, the people who turned up with the ballots and voted, even if they all voted for Republican. They're not gonna, even if the Republican have got all these things that say, oh, if you're a member of the Republican Party, these are the things you believe in, these are the things we're going to do with the country, blah, blah, blah. But in local council, you can't just say, I'm going to agree to every single project the Republicans had on their manifesto all year, because half of those projects haven't even been evaluated by the council yet because they haven't even submitted them. And then when you submitted them, you've got to look at the evidence of each case based on the evidence of that case. And then the councillors have got to vote on it on the merits of the evidence. But you can have a political party that's just sat there saying, all right, we're going to redevelop this entire county and do all these different projects separate, and then everyone just signs it and votes them in, because the council still operates like a court, and each thing has to go through checks, procedures, and then gets voted on independently. And in fact, the electors, you can't consent to like a package of a party by electing one separate candidates, because that it would be like saying that essentially what you would be saying is like Starmer's doing now is releasing all the prisoners, every single one of them, like in bulk. But that's the Parliament thing that he's doing. It ain't a magistrates court in Pickering that's doing it. It's you can't say that, right. There's going to be 564 offences this year going through the Crown Court. So, all the jury are going to quit them all, if you vote for, Judge Johnson, right? Because none of the evidence has been heard for all those cases. How can you bulk acquit 100 criminal damage cases when you haven't even had the evidence for each case yet, on the basis that we've all voted for this certain judging or this jury's in there? You just can't do that. That's effectively what Starmer is running the entire Labour Party on, and now the Tories do. If you vote us in, we're just all these things we're going to do in our term, but yet each of those things is a case by case thing. What it is a fundamental flaw, and it's based in fantasy. It's wishful thinking. It's kind of like they've lost touch with what actually the process is and what reality is and the truth. And that's the thing with the imagination. And when you really want something, and when you've got the money, and when these people are very, very used to getting what they want, they've got endless supplies of money. There's nothing that they can't buy materially. Bill Gates, there is no jacket on this planet that Bill Gates cannot buy if he wants it, or pay someone to make him a custom one. There's no car that Bill Gates can't have. There's no property that he can't buy. And if he can't, then he finds, this is the thing, they're finding a way to do it. These people are so spoiled that they think there's nothing they can't have. And when you get to that level, then they're just coming up with these policies in their companies which they just can't work. A policy that is not possible to the law of England. And then when they start getting people to, we'll say we'll have our own little policies or laws in our company, and we'll get everyone who deals with us to agree to them. They get so used to conjuring up these ridiculous things that they're getting people to consent to, stupid people who don't know what they're consenting to, that then when it comes to the real law and it comes to the actual law of the government that everyone's meant to comply with, including them, then, like employment law and stuff like that, it might be the only thing that they are sort of complying with, but they don't respect the law anymore, because they're making so many rules and clauses and policies in their own company that are just insane, that when it comes to the real law, I mean, they're even lobbying for the real law, what the law should be and so forth. And then, look at the police. They're pretending that this Town and Country Planning Act doesn't exist when it completely, totally regulates advertisements in public, and they're pretending that it doesn't exist when it does, and they're just throwing the Criminal Damage Act around with complete disregard to this other act, which makes a lot of it lawful, and that never gets argued, whether the advertisements conform or don't conform, whether they to the specifications. That doesn't even get argued, because they're not even using the act, because the act makes a lot of advertisements in public permissible and so forth. A lot of these big advertising companies have lobbied to get their adverts in all these places that not too long ago were considered dangerous or distracting. Yet all the campaign groups are getting the police are like getting them put in prison for putting adverts in some of these places, like on a motorway bridge or on a infrastructure bridge or something, on the Golden Gate Bridge or something. When yet the council seems to be able to give themselves deemed and express consent to put Christmas lights on there, which is a representation, and they're not getting put in prison. Money seems to be buying the privilege beyond political. The corporate sector have bought themselves privileges and lobbied for privileges that money has bought them in commercial enterprise that is far beyond what the political rights are, and the political rights are free. You don't have to pay anything for them, and you don't need to ask consents. But there's people getting arrested, just Stop Oil people getting arrested and put in prison for putting a banner on a bridge when the council are covering it in fairy lights. So what we've got is the police are actually they're going against, they're using police forces and powers against citizens who have got rights and saying these things are dangerous when they're taking money from private corporate entities and saying, yeah, go for it, paint the town red. It makes a lot of money out of it. I'll be driving through your drive-through, buying your burgers. This is the thing. What the police is doing, it is like, the police putting Just Stop Oil in prison for putting a banner on a bridge. If you want to put themselves at risk of danger, that's up to them. I think a lot of them have been doing training courses for climbing and stuff, and I think he was a civil engineer, that guy who did it. And then on the other hand, but yet the police are like, staring at the fairy lights on the bridge when it's Christmas, and then going and putting Santa Claus a cookie and a sherry out on the table. It's wrong. It's just wrong. What I think is, I think that if the government wasn't corrupted, then if some of these companies were corrupted and poisoning the rivers and that, then surely the citizens would, wouldn't you raise money with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and then he walks into the council with like pulls up with a van and empties all the ballots out and says, right, clean this river up. And then the council do it because they might be signed a thing in England, at least it was selfless. Why wouldn't they do it when it says on the sheet that you need XXX signatures, and then the councillors are meant to be voting in the chamber on it? Now, why wouldn't all the people in the village want the river cleaned up? I can't see how any councillor voting on it would vote against cleaning the river up or making the companies, and then they were appointing all these people. But I understand that they clearly weren't doing their job properly, and that's why Kennedy has to come in privately and sue them. But it seems wrong to me in a way when we are already paying for the existence of those officers that are meant to do the environmental checks and on the companies and so forth. It seems insane that we're paying for it twice. And I'm not saying that but shouldn't we be holding them to account on paper through the ballot? But obviously that isn't or wasn't working, like with the Stop Cop City thing wasn't working. That judge guy was, not the judge, the mayor guy was trying to pull out every coin in the book to say that they didn't qualify for it and get it off this ballot or so forth. But remember in the first constitution that those people aren't meant to vote or even be encouraged to join other parties. This is why Kamala Harris is, I don't really think she's like a small child who's got into a cult or a gang and they've brainwashed her and they've just, they're scared that, there's all this, she's scared with crime, she's been an attorney, they show the pictures of all the murders and the accidents and that, and then they become, like Extinction Rebellion are, absolutely mind bent on certain causes, and they've got all these big companies, lawyers. Those political parties shouldn't have all this money to hire all these private armies of lawyers and so forth. Um, how can someone in office, how can a president and a vice president with the title, right, suddenly somehow be like Superman and Wonder Woman and take their costume off, and then they're not the president and vice president, and then hire privately a load of private lawyers to take legal action against their opponents, when while they're in office, they've already got appointed persons within the government to do that. It seems ridiculous to me. I think the political party model is severely, it's got flaws in it, because it started off in England when they had the court party, were the ones in the cabinet, the ones who were in government, and the opposition were the rest of the MPs who weren't. And then it slided round when you've got some of them are in government in the party that's won, and then some of them aren't. It's maybe people from certain ideas are always going to form sort of groups, but the model behind it is meant to be that still now, really, the model is meant to be that the candidate, the person who's been elected, does still actually represent the persons who elected them, even if the majority of those persons chose a person who is from a certain political party. They're still in that office, in that surgery, to represent all of the persons in that area, not just the ones who elected them, the ones who won, or the ones who lost as well. All of them, they're meant to represent all. They only won the position. They didn't it's not like some of the citizens were beaten and then they don't have a say. They can't use the public toilets. They're not allowed to have their bins emptied because they lost. I mean, wouldn't that be novel now? Wouldn't it be novel that in every area where a Republican won, none of the Democrats are allowed to have their bins emptied because they're losers and they don't have a right to go and see that candidate because he doesn't represent them, and they won't be getting the pavement swept or something like that. Then Kamala Harris really would be, going, it wouldn't be black and white then, it would be red and blue. You might as well put them in, if the Republicans win, you might as well put the Democrats in chains. They're meant to represent every single person in that area, but on each matter as it appears before the authority based on the evidence. You can't just approve every single thing that is on the Republicans' manifesto agenda on the basis that, the majority of the people in the area supported that candidate, so you might as well say that, that candidate's vote is going to win on everything that goes through in that term, because it isn't. Just same with the legal cases. That's the thing. I don't know why they started encouraging the people in the government to support or join a party, because what they're doing is they're getting allies within the government. The government are only meant to be allied to the people. It's meant to be all this salute the flag thing in America. Salute the flag. They're all meant to be, serving the United States Constitution. That's what the world was led to believe. And now it turns out that you might as well salute these armies of lawyers. It's because it seems to me that when you get to the top of the flagpole, there's an army of lawyers sat at the top of there with the president. And in just a minute, who's are these lawyers? Well, they're my personal private lawyers. But where are the lawyers of the federal government, the Attorney General? Well, this is just, it's all these are election matters. Well, you're not allowed to intervene in an election. In a private capacity. Well, but isn't the American government supposed to be overseeing the election? Is this impartial factor of it? The thing with all these legal cases is someone makes a profit out of it. If it was like Stop Cop City, and they were cleaning up the Hudson River on a similar basis to Stop Cop City, but clean up the Hudson River, all of the money is usually donated. All of the money is usually from donations from the public, more like a group thing, and it's going to be put through the department of the local government that deals with it. Fair enough, if it's not working, there's got to be something you can do. But isn't that the point of the petition? That's meant to be like, that's why you get all the signatures. We demand this or that, and you're doing it for pursuit of the river being cleaned up, not for a profit. Well, not to say that you can't raise money to cover all your costs, but it's not meant to be for a profit. Matters of church, state and law aren't meant to be for the pursuit of a profit. You're allowed to fundraise, but none of it is classed as profit. It's classed as to pay for all the costs, so no one's at a loss from it. If you want to raise money for it, isn't that meant to be the basis of it? I think, it just all seems wrong to me. And this is why, are those lawyers for profit? The thing in England with elections and having an election agent, all that money is meant to be claimed back from Parliament, and they're meant to have a maximum spend on it and stuff like that in England. So the election's not for profit itself. This is the election, right? I don't know what is happening now. An election is not meant to be for profit, right? An election is not meant to be for profit, right? The pursuit of the election is to elect candidates. It's not to sell bottles of Coke for X profit, right? And all of the items are only meant to raise money for the campaign to cover the costs, right? That's why you're allowed to have all these non-profit entities, right? So what I can't see now, right, is that if an election campaign is non-profit in England, right, and if the election agent claims money back from Parliament, so forth, and they've got maximum spend on certain things, and if there's any issue with the election, and then, they have an election petition, I'm sure, even if that election petition wasn't done by a public prosecutor or by the Attorney General, even if it was done privately, wouldn't you claim the money back for those legal costs? But someone shouldn't be profiting out of that, though, because if you think about it, right, how can you have a private lawyer who is profiting personally from an election when an election is a non-profit process, right? Because if the public prosecutor who prosecutes the election petition, right, afterwards, he is already paid for. He's been paid a wage. He's not working for like a law firm who's making a profit out of it, is he? He's paid by the government, right? They're meant to be impartial. So that's the thing. If you did prosecute in England an election petition, because if there's some fraud in the election or someone didn't follow the rules, and even if someone did get a private lawyer, the thing is, even if you got donations to cover that private lawyer, but that private lawyer is making a profit out of a process which is non-profit in its goals, isn't that meant to be why there's already appointed government officials all the way up through the government who are already paid for by the taxpayer? Yeah, their wage is paid by the taxpayer, but it's not like for profit, is it? Business, because it's the government that is already paid for by the people. So what I can't understand with these army of lawyers they're making a personal profit in their law firms out of a election that is non-profit and all paid for by the people. And in a way, you might as well just say, this is convenient. There's some money to be made out of this election. We'll just say that the other side's cheating all the time and even try and prove it. Well, we did. And we also made loads of money. Our lawyers and our army of lawyers made money out of it. Just an army of lawyers. It might as well be an army of mercenaries. It might as well be the IRA or something. Anyone who can afford an army of lawyers could probably afford their own private police force. Wouldn't you start scratching your head, right? If the New York police commissioner had a security force. This is the thing with RFK, he's having to pay for his own private security, isn't he? Yet the danger and threat to him was because of an election, because he was running for president, and that is a process which is non-profit. So why shouldn't it be paid for out of the government state? Why should he be a personal private loss from it? Even though it's funds that he's going to be raising out of it, what would the police say? What would the CIA say if suddenly a 10,000 armed persons turned up, wearing a red Willy Wonka costume, all armed with AK-47s? Wouldn't they say, just a minute, is this a standing army? Who are you? Oh, we're the private army of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in their electoral capacity, in their candidate capacity, to defend them. Just a minute. What would the New York Police Department say if a Red Army turned up, with AK-47s, enforcing the Democrat Party all around them, and also the lawyers? And then this is the thing, it's starting to look to me like almost like some kind of like they've got their own government, kind of like their own. It's almost like you see, if you get, now that they've started encouraging and making it legal for all these people in government office to vote, it's starting to look a little bit like Starship Enterprise, isn't it? When they got the mustard and the red costume. Because, I mean, what if you said to, like, Rand Paul or Ted Cruz or John Kennedy in the Senate? What happens if you say, okay, then let's have all the Republicans in the Senate wear red and all the Democrats in the Senate wear blue, right? And then go get your AK-47s, and if we have an argument, then, you join your regiment and fight, almost like the Civil War. I'm getting a sense that this is what this army of lawyers is kind of representing now. But aren't the staff of the government who work for the government not meant to have a red or blue? They're not meant to vote, are they? In that original constitution, they're meant to be impartial, which is supposedly what the contract is for a lot of these local councils in England. It says that they're selfless. They're just supposed to work by what the law says and do their job, not take a political side, so that they won't. That's like, how can you have control of the council? How can you come into work with the red or the blue uniform on? I just, now that I've been thinking about it for the last few months, I just don't get how you can have control of a council or claim control of a council from a political party. Because if you've got selflessness policy and you're acting on each vote and decision based on the evidence, then you can't have a manifesto or anything really like that. And all this strategic planning, who's it? What is the strategy? they started to strategize against voters, and when it starts to get into strategizing against voters for political parties, that's illegal because the council is not allowed to influence, or the government is not allowed to influence the voters using any government monies or advertising powers. Only the political parties can in their own independent capacity, you know. And that independent capacity is meant to be all funded, you know. It true that, you know, lawyers are making profits out of legal cases against other, against this process, but, you know, even the advertising, okay, if you buy adverts, right, they got to cost materials, right, but you can claim the tax back. You're meant to be able to claim the tax back from advertising materials that weren't for profit. But obviously the company makes profit out of it. But, you know, the government haven't even been providing a proper process for claiming VAT back from petitioning or political campaigns. You know, it doesn't seem right that a independent party is paying for lawyers and paying for them to challenge a process that wasn't for a profit. It wasn't for a for-profit process. It's a process of church, state, or law matter. Yet all these army of lawyers, okay, they might have paid for those lawyers out of the party funds, but those lawyers are making a profit out of this as well. Massive amounts, huge amounts of profit. It seems the process is not meant to be for profit, but yet all these army of lawyers seem to be making massive amounts of profits out of the Democrats' funding chest. You know, and that amount of money, it seems a bit dubious to me when the two people. This is the mind bender of it, right? If you were the president of the United States of America and the vice president, both of them in the same political party, they get to choose or appoint, unless they're voted in by the public, anyone they want to be the Attorney General or anyone that they want to run these departments, so it's their top choice, but they're still not happy and convinced, even though they're in charge and they get to appoint who they want, except for the officers that are by public vote into position. And then you would have thought you would trust the public, who they want to have their ballots checked. You know, if the public vote in this person or that person or whatever, and all the people are responsible. But what they're actually doing is they're saying, we're in charge of the American government currently, but the people that we chose to do the job are shit. And therefore, in our other, you know, on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, we therefore, because we choose crap people who are serving, you know, they're having to pay for an army of lawyers for profit, because apparently the people they chose aren't doing the job properly enough. You know, it doesn't seem right to me. It seems ridiculous. It's almost kind of like having a captain on a ship, right? And then he chooses his crew, right? And they can't lift the sails up properly or fucking run the ship. So they happen to own their own pirate ship or their own private boat, which they pull up alongside with their own private army of lawyers, and then they come on board and, you know, take over it or something. Yet they were in charge of the other ship as well and got to choose everyone on it. You know, it doesn't seem right to me. It seems wrong. And isn't the point of the elections are meant to be checked and approved by people who are unbiased? It's almost kind of like Biden and Camilla are in their unbiased costume and they walk into the government and appoint everyone, and then it's all running, and then they go, okay, then let's do the election, and then they say, oh, this is all going to be run above board, and you even get to be in charge of it. But yet, then when they walk out of the room, they take the costume off and put another one on, and then they say, okay, let's get a private army in, because the other lot haven't done it properly, but they were the ones who were fucking in charge of them. There's something really, really ridiculous about it, and I think that isn't that money laundering? He's got to break some kind of money laundering or tax law. This because I just can't see how a fully funded government thing running purely on taxpayers' money with people who are elected by the people is not doing its job properly, or the people, because aren't Biden and Camilla challenging the people? If the people in Atlanta are getting to vote for who they want as the mayor, and who was the vote for the governor, and they're voting for who's the police chief, and all these people that the people have voted for, they want that person to be the person who checks the ballots or does this or that or whatever. Aren't Biden and Camilla kind of challenging the people's choice, or the people who are in the government? This is the problem with what's happening at Stop Cop City. I think it's kind of like that Atlanta issue is kind of like a micro version of what's happening at the federal level now with the government. With all that mayor was trying to, even though they complied with everything, he was fighting against it. But how can he fight against it when he's meant to be, this selflessness policy or whatever? It's supposed to be doing what the people ask them to do, or what they vote for. The whole strategic planning thing is, who are these people who are drafting up these strategic plans? What companies are they working for? What interests do they have? Was it a strategic plan for the Hudson River to become really poisonous? Because it wasn't much of a strategic planning. It was terrible planning, and obviously the health of the nation, was that part of the strategic plan? That's the main thing on the agenda now, or the help make America healthy again. So strategic planning doesn't necessarily go well. It goes well for the people who make a hell of a lot of money, and then you say they're successful because we've got loads of money, but what are the effects of that on all the people and on the environment? So it's what could we be doing wrong? We've been making billions of dollars. We can't be doing anything wrong. This is successful. It's almost like driving a steamroller down the road and trashing everything, and then saying, yes, we got to the end of the street, well done. It's but yes, there's a trail of devastation behind them. But they say, oh yeah, it's almost like racing two people in steamrollers racing each other. See who wins. Yet there's a trail of devastation behind them, but they thought they'd done well. This is the thing.